Roll. You ready? Everybody take a deep breath. Okay, we're going on a journey here. Okay. This week's Parsha is Parshat Vayakhel. Vayakhel literally means, and he gathered. So if we look in the classic commentators, okay, the classic commentators will say, and he gathered, because no other Parsha starts with, and he gathered. What is being gathered here? What is this gathering? What is special about this gathering? So we learn actually, let me just find the page here. It is actually the day after Yom Kippur. As we know that Yom Kippur, in Jewish tradition, right, is called literally the Day of Atonement, correct? It is said to be what you would ask probably any standard Jewish person, what's the holiest day of the year, right? Really, it's not the holiest day of the year. Really, the day of Purim is the holiest day of the year, believe it or not, okay? But in any case, Yom Kippur was the day that Moses came down with the second set of tablets. As we know that Moses was up the first 40 days. He was up the first set of 40 days at the Mount Sinai experience, which was the 6th of Sivan. He went up. 40 days later, what happened? The incident of the golden calf. And then Moses, after he came down, and we had this in last week's Parsha, he grinded up the cow, right? Put it in the water, made everybody drink. Everybody drank, kind of had to remedy that situation in a hurry. He went back up again for another 40 days just to pray on behalf of the Jewish people that Hashem would not wipe out the Jewish people and start from Moshe Rabbeinu another nation. And then he had to go up another set of 40 days with the second set of tablets. Now the difference between the first set of tablets and the second set of tablets, there's a big difference. Does anybody know what the major difference is? What's the difference between the first set, besides the fact that the first set got broken?
Well, first the stones were made by God.
Yes.
And then the second one, he went out of stone.
Yes, he did. Moses had to go ahead and mine it out himself at a sapphire. Actually, it was like right under his tent. Oh, how convenient, right? So actually, that's where Moshe got his wealth from, would you believe it or not, right? In other words, the leftovers of this, he's got a mine underneath his tent, right, of sapphire, right? So he took what was needed for the tablets, and then there was the leftover stuff. And he asked God, are you going to do anything with that? Are you going to use that? No, I don't need it. Go ahead and take it. Cha-ching! Okay. So in any case, Moses came down. Moses had to hoe those tablets out himself, and he came down on Yom Kippur with the second set of tablets. But what was that? And what did it symbolize? Okay? So obviously, him coming down with the second set of tablets was really what we're going to kind of talk about today. And you have to just kind of get this other little theory, this other little thought, that really, without the first set, if we never got the first set of tablets, we would never be able to get the second set. What do you mean? What do I mean by that? We had to have the first set. When Moses was up at Mount Sinai with Hashem and the sin of the golden calf, God actually says, I'm not going to give these to you just yet because of what happened, what was going on. So Moses, though, he grabbed hold of them. He took them. And of course, we know what happens. He breaks them. Breaking them is not such a simple thing, right? I mean, what are you talking about? This is like given by God, these tablets, right? It was his directive. It was meant to do. And this is tonight we're going to discover why. But he had to break them. But he had to receive them first. We had to get them, even though we didn't get them whole, like as they were. So the idea really expressed here is the day after Yom Kippur, okay, everybody goes back into their tent, and Moses, of course, has to gather everybody again. He has to do a special causing everybody to be gathered to discuss what? The tabernacle. Now, I'm sure that some of you will go through the Parshas, and really it's at quite an unbelievable length and details of this. Exactly 5 Parshas. 5 are dedicated to the tabernacle. And here we have this unbelievable, let's call it redundancy, of Vayakhel and Pekude and the next Parsha. The next 2 Parshas are just going over all of those articles again. All of the vessels, the vestments, everything that took in terms of making it all over again. So what do you think when you have to go over this? And how do you connect? How do you relate to it? So we got to go back just a little bit, okay? That I know that Rod last week, he discussed about the Chet Egel. We're just going to have to do a little bit of a review and a little bit of pointing out some really deep things, okay? You got to ask in general, I think the question might have been asked, and it's kind of like, when you really look at not just the sin of the golden calf, but how many times did the Jewish people test God in the desert? Does anybody know? How many times? Was it once, twice, 3 times? 10 times. Explicit verse, he says, you tested me these 10 times in the desert, and it's looked upon as a sin, right? And then when you think about it, when it said, Eile Elokecha Yisrael, for example, in the sin of the golden calf, when they finally produced this cow, right? The phrase right upon this making this cow was, these are your gods, Israel. So yeah, who's talking here? Who's these are your gods? Right? Who's saying that? Who's saying these? Right? So we know in tradition it is called the Erev Rav, or this mixed multitude that came up with Moshe out of Egypt. Right? These were Gentiles. The Zohar says they were actually sent from Paro. Can you imagine? Paro sends them, and Moshe says, "Yeah, you can come along." Wait, who are you working for? Who was signing your checks a week ago? That guy? Call of the Wild. That's my son. I'm gonna have to turn off my phone now. Okay.
We have a tradition here that every whose phone rings, they have to buy lunch for everybody.
That's great.
Nobody has paid yet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So anyways, if you really look at it, not only just that was instigated, but the Jewish people, when they were in the desert, they come, where's the water? Where's the meat? Actually, twice about the water, twice about the meat, right? We've been traveling so much. When are we going to stop traveling? When are we going to rest? Then there was, so many times with the spies. If you count it, there's 10 times, right? Tired of this bread, this manna, right? Right? Really, it was known that the Erev Rav, this mixed multitude that came out of Egypt, were the ones who instigated most of it. And Datan and Aviram were also there. Datan and Aviram were also just these 2 people from the tribe of Ruvain, who basically, they were the instigators. It was basically 2 guys. And how many people fell in the sin of the golden calf? Does anybody remember the number? 3,000. That's not 2.5 million. How many people? And yet here God is saying, man, you guys, you all tested me these 10 times. And really, it was only so few people. And it was still regarded in God as a huge, tremendous sin. This is an unbelievable deep concept that I'm going to share with you now. It actually comes from the Leshem. The Leshem, his name was Rabbi Eliashuv. Actually, he was the Rav of Rav Kook, if any of you have ever heard of Rav Kook, right? His rabbi, who was this unbelievable Kabbalist in Europe, who basically just unbelievable beyond what anybody can imagine, and he's definitely all the rabbis would love to learn these texts, but they never get around to it because it's very obscure. But in any case, he brings down this idea, this concept, and the concept is that here the Jewish people, they were shown so many miracles and so many unbelievable things throughout Egypt, even before, the way that the forefathers lived. It was unbelievable. It was just beyond nature how God was with them there in that way, to show them so many miracles and the parting of the Red Sea. And he brought them out of Egypt, and they were led by a cloud, and they were fed this dew from heaven. And, if they needed meat, sure, a whole camp's full of meat, and all of this stuff just kept coming, and unbelievable miracles that they saw. They had a huge problem, and the problem still lingers in humanity to this day. It is the tikkun of the world. And it is what? That really, it was so hard for the Jewish people to take God, to accept the fact that God could be with them so lovingly in such a way. They couldn't accept it. In other words, yeah, God, wow. He's so good. He's so good. He's so good. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. And that's what they couldn't believe it. It was like, he's so loving. He's so benevolent. It's just so amazing. And to live like that in the desert on a day-to-day basis, that they were being cradled like a baby is cradled by his mother in such a loving way. It was so hard for them to take. So when it came time to a few of these people who were instigating, Moses is dead, we got to get a new God, they were willing to sit back and be quiet because they wanted to see, is God still going to be with us even if this happens? In other words, let's see what happens even if we do this. We all have kids, and kids just do not stop testing boundaries. I think they do. I'm still trying to figure out when. I'm still asking when. A lot of times, even the teens, they got to test those boundaries, to push those boundaries. What about here? How about, okay, here? You got to get mad if I go here? Okay? So, when you see, you got to lose it already, and then they're... So here was kind of like a testing. Yeah, we're testing the boundaries. We're saying, well, okay, God loves us, but he can't be with us even if we do this. He can't be with us that loving if we're just do this. Or we allow this to happen. Really, they didn't do it. Really, yes, they didn't do it. They did it. It was just a few small people, but they were quiet, and everybody knows that silence is agreement. And if you're quiet and you don't make a protest, it's as if you're included in it. And you're right, they didn't actually physically do any of those things. But they were inadequate with themselves, and we're all suffering from that sense of inadequacy to this day within us. And our test is really to fix our sense of inadequacy with God, to be in an intimate relationship with God. That is where every single thing, humanity in the world is going towards, to fix that. So the idea of testing, the idea was because they felt inadequate, and the idea that sense still stayed with them all the time to some degree. But we have to know that there's a way to fix, okay? And we have to get into the idea of fixing it, which is, it's very deep, okay? So we look at the golden calf, and we look at what happened with the golden calf. That after the golden calf, as we know, if you want to turn to the verse, I'll show you which verses to look at now. In Kit Sisa, I have it here. So he says, Hashem says to Moshe, whoever has sinned against me, I shall erase him from my book, and now go lead the people to that which I have spoken to you. And behold, my angel shall go before you. And on a day that I make accounting, I shall bring their sin to count against them. And Hashem smote the people with a plague. Okay, but that's not the verse I wanted to show you. But it was basically there was a malach that was going to go. Oh yeah, in verse Beit, actually verse 2 in Lamed Gimel 33, verse 2. V'shalakti lefanecha malach, and I will send an angel before you, and I shall drive out the Canaanite, the Amorite, the Hittite, the Perizzite, the Hivi, the Yevusi, to land flowing with milk and honey. For I will not ascend in your midst, for you are a stiff-necked people, lest I will annihilate you on the way. The people heard this bad thing. This is verse 4, chapter 33, verse 4. Is everybody with me? The people heard this bad tiding, and they grieved. And they, each man, did not put on his crown. What crown are we talking about? And then the verse went on. Hashem said to Moshe, say to the children of Israel, you are a stiff-necked people. If I ascend among you, I may annihilate you in an instant. And now remove your crown from upon you. And I thought they already took off their crown. Why remove it? They didn't put it on. And I shall know what I shall do to you. And so the children of Israel divested of their crown from Mount Horeb. So the idea here is they had these crowns. Actually, what were these crowns from? The crowns was when they stood at Mount Sinai. They said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will hear. When they were first offered the Torah, they said, we will do it, and then we'll understand it, we'll yearn for more. There's a lot of depth just in that whole phrase itself. But once they said that, so it's known, it's taught in our tradition that 600,000 angels descended and put 2 crowns on the heads of all of the Jewish people. One for Na'aseh, the word we will do, and one for Nishma, we will hear. 2 crowns. They say that we reached a level, like what Rod said last week, that they reached a level at Mount Sinai as if they were before Adam had sinned in the Garden of Eden. They reached the pre-sin. They reached a level of unbelievable where there was no impetus to sin at that point. Death they were free from. There was no death. You know, at the end of this verse, maybe you've seen it before. So the children of Israel were divested of their crown from Mount Horeb. Did you know that there was another name for Mount Sinai called Horeb? There's even a book called Horeb. You know what Horeb means? Destruction. Mount Horeb means destruction mountain. What? Mount Sinai? Destruction mountain? Go figure. What does that mean? Why was it called that? And it's in the Chumash. It's not some rabbi calling it that, right? It's right there. Why would they be called that? So it says here, this is the Gemara that was quoted before. It's an unbelievable Gemara in Avodah Zorah. The passage says like this. It says, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, Lo aso Yisrael es ha'egel, that the Jewish people did not do the egel, ela litain pitchon pe lebalei tshuva, rather to give an opening of the mouth for those who were repentant. Right? And then they even quote his statement, but they give it a little bit of an embellishment later on. They speak about King David also, that King David was not fitting for that sin. Right? It was forced upon him by a decree of the king, the sin of King David, and the sin of the golden calf. It says, Lo Yisrael ru'uyin la'osamai. They weren't fitting for that deed. What do you mean they weren't fitting for that deed? Because there was a verse that says that their hearts were so pure. Right? It says, Vayala vavam zeh lahem layirosi. They completely fear me all of the days. Right? So really they weren't fitting to do the sin of the golden calf. So why did they do it? Why did it happen? Right? So Rashi says, Gazeres melech haisal litain pitchon pe leshavim. It was a decree of the king to give an opening for those communities later that would sin so that they would not have an excuse to say, oh, we can't, it's too hard to do tshuva, what good is the returning anyways, what can we really do, how can we really fix it? And we go, well, look at the Jewish people, look what happened at Mount Sinai with the sin of the golden calf, they got out of it, you can do it too. There's a question here, there's a big question here. If they reached this unbelievable level of consciousness at Mount Sinai, that was like before Adam sinned in the Garden of Eden. They reached a level where what? Where there was no sin. They were on a roll. They were going to go ahead and eradicate evil in the entire world. That's why it's called Mount Horeb. That's why it's called Destruction Mountain. Destruction Mountain because it destroys all what we call the idiot's way of life. Okay? It's a destruction of the idiot's way of living, right? Meaning it's the destruction of evil. It's the destruction of all of what the nations were doing with all of their idolatry and their murder and all of the other stuff that they were involved in. It was the destruction of their way. That's what's right. It was that they were on a roll. So listen, wait a minute. If they're on a roll, they're at Mount Sinai, right? They're hot. They're high. Unbelievable. We've defeated evil. There's no death, right? So there's not going to be any future generations who would sin, that they need to go ahead and use the reference at Mount Sinai, the golden calf, for them to teach them that, there wasn't going to be any sin anymore. It was going to be the ultimate redemption of the world. It was on the path. The path of the redemption of the world was at hand. So why would this be forced upon them? That there was going to be. So, do you get the question? More or less? If there was going to be the final redemption, why did they need to sin in case there wasn't going to be a final redemption? But there was going to be a final redemption. They were on a roll for the final redemption. It was happening. But the reality is, and it's it's so astounding, it's so amazing, is the truth is that we know that the Jewish people, when they left Egypt early. They were supposed to be in Egypt for 400 years. They actually left after how long? Anybody know? 210 years. They were actually 210 years, right? Actually, the whole 7-day argument between Moshe and Hashem at the burning bush, Moshe did not want to take them out. They're not ready, right? Take them out. You got to take them out. They're crying. No, they're not ready. It's part of that 7-day. Besides, let's get Aaron. I got an Aaron plan. Aaron plan sounds like a good plan. No, God was going Moshe plan, and he was going Aaron plan, Moshe plan, Aaron plan. Till finally, after 7 days, okay, Moshe Aaron plan. But in any case, a part of the argument was, no, they're not ready. They're not ready to go out, but they're suffering. The suffering is immense. They're crying out, So they came out a little too early. And something, it always happens. When God has an account, and 400 years is 400 years, and he's got to now finagle. You know what the word finagle? He's got to Jimmy Shank the situation. Okay? And he's got to bring him out after 210 years, right? There's going to be a repercussion. If something is not cooked, it's not cooked. Okay? But, the relationship that you have to look at the relationship that they were in Egypt with the Kodesh Baruch Hu is very much like a father, like a parent-child relationship. Father-son, father-daughter, parent-child. How much can you hear the kid screaming? How much can you hear it? So Hashem had to take him out. And there's other reasons why. They were in the 49th level of defilement, as most of the Kabbalists will go ahead and tell us, right? It's actually an argument. Is there a 50th level of defilement, of Tumah? Really, it's an argument. But most commentaries will say that there was a 50th, so the issue was if they would fall to the 50th, then they would be gone forever. Things like that. Bottom line, he had to take them out after 210 years. So the idea here is because he had to take him out after 210 years, if they would have waited, if we would have gone until the whole term, right? If it would have gone to the whole term, it would have been a completely different situation. But because they took him out early, so therefore it resulted in the situation that we see with the golden calf. But I'm going to take you back, and I'm going to take it to a completely different place. Okay? Actually, since if you have Chumash, we got Genesis here. Okay? Now, if you go to Genesis, and it's known, all of the holy books say this. All of the holy books, they equate everything that happened in the Garden of Eden as the exact same thing happened in the Jewish people. Adam getting kicked out of the Garden of Eden is the same thing that the temples were destroyed and the Jewish people got kicked out of Israel. It's all part of the same pattern. And very much of other things that went on in the Garden of Eden, it also went on with the Jewish people. And I'm going to explain it to you, show it to you right now. Okay? I had sheets, but of course I came from the chili cook-off, and the sheets were over here, and I was over here. Otherwise, I would have been late. But I had chili. I had chili, and it was good. Okay.
Next time, email them to me, and I'll have them.
Okay, that would be good. Okay. Okay. So we'll go to the beginning. I'll tell you what verse to go to. First, we have to go to this verse. No, that's not it. Okay, first go to this verse here. That's not it. Okay. Chapter 1. Okay. Verse 27. Chapter 1, verse 27. And it says, and God created man in his image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. We're learned here from tradition, and all of the holy books bring down, that when Adam was first created, he was created, male and female were together. The situation actually was called, in all of the holy books, was called back to back. Okay? Some of you have heard this before. Back to back. Okay? And then what happened is, if you go, shoot forward, and you go ahead to verse 21, chapter 2, verse 21. Right after Hashem says, it's not good that man is alone, I'm going to make a helpmeet for him, and he brought him all the animals of the field, and then Adam saw all the animals, gave him names, but he still couldn't find a helpmeet. So then comes verse 21, which says, Vayapel Hashem Elokim tardema al Adam vayishan. And it says, so Hashem cast a deep sleep upon the man that he slept, and he took one of his sides, and he closed flesh in his place. And then God built that side that he had taken from the man, and he built a woman. And he brought her to the man. And then man said, this time it is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. And he called her a woman. Okay? So the idea here is, first, in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve were created back to back. And then what happened was called the Nasira. The Nasira means the sawing in half. The sawing in half of the backs, in order for them to come, Adam and Eve, to become face to face. Okay? This paradigm is probably the inner crux paradigm of all of the mystical teachings, is in this scenario right here. Okay? It's in Rosh Hashanah. It goes in all of the kavanot, the special intentions of all of the prayers, in the silent prayer. It's in every single thing. Because really, and interestingly enough, it was finally explained to me. Believe me, I've been learning this stuff for years. I finally heard a class from Rabbi Moshe Weinberger, and he finally gave it to me in such an explanation, and it hit me so much. Is that you have to understand, what is the relationship? What is back to back? And what's front to front? Really, everything that it's describing is a relationship. Okay? That some people, they have a relationship that's back to back. You could love about them, you can care about them, you could be concerned about them, but you must admit back-to-back relationship, a Bayesian style. This is got to think conceptually here. It's not intimacy, right? It's not a face-to-face, right? There's something missing in that relationship. Okay, it's definitely not romantic. You can care, you can take care of, you can help the person, but it's not face-to-face. Very much like, we can look at it in terms of relationship of a parent to a child. A parent to a child, they're part of the same flesh. Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, in the very beginning, were part of the same flesh, right? It's a relationship, but there's a lot of things that are granted in the relationship. A lot of things are taken for granted. A parent to a child, it takes a lot of things for granted. But what has to happen is there has to be a cutting. So what is the cutting? What is the cutting? The severing, the sawing in half. What is that? What is that? That's when the person feels broken. The person feels alone. Forget about being disconnected, for sure, disconnected, abandoned. Really, when the person, any person in the world is in such a state where they're feeling in such an alone state, such despair, such suffering, whatever the suffering might be, that's the cutting. The cutting is for a reason. Because if you didn't have the cutting, you wouldn't have the possibility of a relationship, of intimacy, of face-to-face. You wouldn't have the possibility of a romantic relationship. All the time that the Jewish people, when they were in Egypt, all those miracles that they saw, all the 10 plagues, the parting of the Red Sea, the giving of the manna, the clouds that followed him in the desert, that was all father-son, that was all parent-child. It's like, of course Hashem's going to give to us, right? He's like a child leading, we're like his children, we're son. And hey, it's a beautiful relationship. One of the most unbelievable verses in the entire Torah is that it says, Banim atem l'Hashem Elokeichem, children are you to God. You are God's children. It's an unbelievable statement. It's a fantastic feeling of connection. But it's not the ultimate connection. What's the ultimate connection? The ultimate connection, obviously, is a romantic relationship. The rest of the Chazal, the rest of this Gemara, actually, talks about King David. It says that King David also wasn't fitting for him to sin with Bathsheba. Wasn't fitting. It was forced on him, the decree of the king, for the same reason, but for individuals. In other words, King David did the sin, and he repented. He came back to teach humanity, on an individual basis, that if an individual sins and they might think, what can I do? How can I come back? There's no way to do it. How great is my coming back? Is it going to really make a difference? And the answer is yes, it will, because King David went and did it. King David went and he did this, and he was able to come back. He wasn't fitting for the sin, but in order to teach humanity in this way. So the reason why you need the sin of the golden calf was to teach about communities as a whole. And then you need King David to teach you about individuals. Okay? You need both. But the idea really is simply it's fascinating. And in order to create, so it's just to go back with King David. So you see King David with what happened with him with Bathsheba. And he repented, of course, and then he composed the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. And the book of Psalms is the most intimate, right, relationship, right, romantic relationship with God. If you're anybody who reads Psalms, it's the most unbelievable poems, unbelievable. So you see, the idea here is you need the cutting. The cutting is as dark as it is and as hard as it is, it's still a stepping stone for a potential to create a higher level relationship with God, a higher level relationship with intimacy, to be intimate with God. And this is what happened at the sin of the golden calf. At the sin of the golden calf, what happened? Yeah, their hearts are broken. It's like you can't get to intimacy. God basically did this to them unless you got a broken heart. The Kutzker Rebbe says this amazing statement. He was one of the Hasidic Rebbes in Europe. He said, I'm going to try to say this right, okay? There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. That's just an unbelievable phrase. There's nothing more whole than a broken heart. That until the Jewish people had this experience of the golden calf and have the broken heart, they could not come to the different relationship. They had to break off from the parent-child style relationship and enter into a new style relationship. Yes, they had the parent-child relationship, and as long as they had that parent-child relationship, they had that level of inadequacy. It was inadequate. Sometimes it's inadequate for a teen. He's 38 years old, still living at home, living off the parents. Maybe he'll get a job. Maybe nowadays he won't think maybe to get a job. Why? I'm playing my computer games, right? So, no. The idea here is to have the thought. The idea here is to climb higher. The idea here is we have to work on getting intimate with God. That is the bottom line here. So the whole idea here is of the golden calf was that breaking, and their hearts were broken completely. So I started asking people, because as I learned this, I'm saying, okay, let me ask you. Do you really need a broken heart in order to have an intimate relationship? And why? What is it about that helps you? And I'm sure everybody has had some time in their life, some situation where they had their hearts broken. Some might have been minor, might be something so small. I'm telling you, the most amazing thing is last week, and the way we learn Chumash, the way we always learn Chumash, the way the rabbis always did is they didn't read newspapers. The Chumash was the Parsha of the week was their newspaper. Whatever was going on in the world, they saw it in the Chumash. That's how they learned. And believe me, I lived it. Last week was just a week of broken hearts. Just shattered. I had a friend of mine I was praying for in Israel who had leukemia. He was suffering, and I was still praying for him. And he had a brother who's getting married in New York last week, and it was a Thursday night. He was getting married, his brother. And so, the family, they got he's in the house, he's at home, more or less he seems pretty stable, right? He went through some very hard treatments. He's not undergoing treatment at the time. And the family has to go to a wedding. So they all get on a plane. And they leave him with friends to take care of him, whatever he needs. And as soon as they landed on the plane, he went into septic shock and passed away. And here they are in New York. The mother doesn't even get out of the airport. She books another flight with her other daughter to go back to the funeral. What does the dad do? They had to ask some rabbis. Some rabbis say you have to stay for the other son to support the others. The wedding has to go on. The bride is waiting. You can't cancel the wedding. So the father here, he's got to be at the wedding of one of his sons while another son is lying dead in Israel. And the son himself who's getting married. I mean, how do you live through something like that? Right? So besides my own little personal experience of my heart getting ripped apart, we can't look at the situations that when our heart gets ripped apart that Hashem hates us. And many people do. And people think that Hashem is out to get us and he doesn't like me. And I'm not the best, I'm not the greatest servant. My praying hasn't been so up to standard. And I've been doing such great mitzvahs, and maybe I said some bad words about some people or did some things that weren't so straight. And maybe so Hashem, he gives me a patch. Patch means spanking. right? So, but it's not true. Hashem is all of our coaches. Hashem is in each and every one of our lives, directing you very personally, very specifically, to get to that relationship. This is what he wants. What, he created you just to fill space? I hope not. Right? Of course, if a person wants to say that he's created just to fill space, then Hashem might give him that. But that's really not the optimal for a creation. So Hashem really wants that intimacy. He says there's potential there. So when there's a shocking event, or there's a separation, or there's a sawing in half, right? You feel your life's been sawed. You feel sawed. We can't look at it as a situation, where Hashem hates us or we're abandoned. God forbid. Yes, it is a feeling of abandonment. I have to admit, yes, it is. It is. But with that, there's a potential. There's a potential for intimacy. So I remember I was talking with somebody, and I mentioned to him, I was saying, like, how does that work? How does it work? That, the breaking of the heart can create that. And he reminded me of when I was with the Rav in Yerushalayim after my son passed away. And he also had a child who passed away from cancer. And this big, huge Rav, he's one of the biggest. He says you have to use your son's death as a motivation for you. So just those simple words, he said a lot of other words, but that was one of the things. It has to motivate you to do things, to do mitzvahs, to do greater things, to bring out God's name in a greater way. And my friend, he reminded me of that because, listen, you can either wallow in depression and sadness and despair, being sawed in half and alone, or no, I can create something else with this. I can create something bigger with this. You have to entertain the thought. You have to ask yourself the question. I can go higher. It can go higher. Because the eventual goal is really to be face to face. If you look in the Holy of Holies, one of the vessels, the holiest vessel, the temple that has the tablet, the vessel that has the tablets in it. It has the broken ones, and it has the whole ones. The cheruvim that were on top, man and woman, face to face, actually embracing. When Am Yisrael and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, when the Jewish people and God are together, they're embracing, husband and wife, face to face, intimacy. Okay? That's in the Holy of Holies, the most holy place ever. That's the real goal of what God wants from us. So the idea here now, let's just take it now. So here are these people at Mount Sinai, 40 days after, heart shattered, broken, praying Moses can go ahead and reestablish this relationship. Believe me, it's unbelievable. And then Moses comes down with the second set of tablets. Whoa! And if we didn't have those first ones, you know why we needed those first ones? I can understand now. You know why? You got to know what a broken heart is. Because the broken heart has to give you that sense of what you can create from it. How deep, how hurt you could be. You have to get a sense of how alone and how despair what it can feel like. And only then can you start to rebuild. Now, the interesting thing is, the first thing that he discusses in this week's Parsha, now we can flip back to this week's Parsha, is after he gathers them, the first directive is this. What Parsha is it again? Vayakhel, okay? The very beginning, okay? It says, Vayakhel Moshe es kol hadas b'nei Yisrael. So Moshe gathers the entire assembly of Israel, and he says to them, these are the things which Hashem has commanded to do them. 6 days you should work, you should do your work, and then the seventh day will be holy. A Shabbos, right? You should not do any malacha on that day. First thing is Shabbos. The almost unbelievable thing is when the Jewish people, after the sin of the golden calf, they had to take down their crowns, those Nasev and Ishma. Who got those crowns? Where did those crowns go? Do we leave them there in the desert? What were they? We don't know what they are. Moses takes the crowns. Moses actually has the crowns. And it's known, actually, that we have one of the special intentions in our Shabbos prayer, the prayer that we make on Shabbos, that we say, Moshe, you are the faithful servant. He is a faithful servant. Actually, we think if you look at it quite simply, you think, okay, he's a faithful servant to God, but he's also the faithful servant to the Jewish people. He cares so much about us. You know, all the souls of the tzaddikim, oh, their hearts they just go for all of the people all the time. And so on Shabbos, Moshe descends with thousands of other souls, and they take those crowns that were taken off, and he puts them back onto the Jewish people on Shabbos. So the first thing is, when the Jewish people come from their brokenheartedness in order to make this reestablishing of the relationship, to make the intimacy with God, that's the Shabbos. That's the first thing. And then, of course, the second thing is what? Which is right after that. Did I lose the page? Oh. And right after that starts the entire work of all of the tabernacle again, right? This is the thing which Hashem commanded. Take from you the truma to Hashem, every person who's generous of heart, and that's where the generous of heart comes. Rabbi Nassan says an unbelievable thing that I read. Unbelievable. He says, you know what builds holiness? What is going to help the kingdom of holiness to overpower? The force of Kedusha is tzedakah. Tzedakah gives the ability that the forces of holiness will overcome. Okay? It's an unbelievable power that it has. When a person gives, next time you give the coin in the tzedakah box, I don't know if they have that here or whatever it is, you have to think, you have to have it in mind that here we are going to use this action of giving, this charity, this tzedakah, whatever it is, that the forces of holiness will overpower. And in that, these two things were the tikkun, were the connecting of the relationship. Don't forget, we did say that it is an argument, actually, if the tabernacle was a result of the sin of the golden calf or not. You know, there's Nachmanides, which says no. Nachmanides says clearly that the whole idea of the tabernacle was your permanent, portable Mount Sinai experience. That's right. Permanent. Did I say this before to you guys? Permanent, portable Mount Sinai experience. You can understand now. If you were at Mount Sinai and you experienced God, the unbelievable revelation, you're not going to leave that mountain, dude. You can't pull me away from this mountain, dude. The mountain's holy, man. We got to go to Israel. No, dude, I'm not leaving this mountain, man. You want some beans? Okay. So, not leaving. We got to go to the Holy Land. God's mountain's holy, man. Not leaving. Okay. We'll make a permanent portable. We can bring it with us. We got Mount Sinai. It's right here. It's a tabernacle. We're going to build it. And therefore, you can come now, right? Okay. All right. Basically, you can check in and recharge. I hate to use this. It's bad metaphor. You can throw stones at me. You know, it's like the Green Lantern has to recharge his ring. And you don't have to say some weird formula that no one can memorize, okay? It was a replugging in, really it is. You need a bolt of Hamuna. It's like, what a charge, right? It's like, yeah, okay? You need that. 3 times a year they would go up to Jerusalem. Why? Right? Right? Got to get that charge. They get the charge. They see God. It used to be that a person was traveling up north. He needed to go to Tzfat, someplace real up north. And he'd go through Jerusalem, and he's traveling, and he get through this village, you know, and they go, hey, where are you from, stranger? And he go, well, I'm from here. I just traveled from Jerusalem. Jerusalem? You just came from Jerusalem? They sit him down. They go, tell us. Give it to us. Right? What's the word? What's the buzz? Right? Because it's like, you know, anybody who who was there. It's Sinai. You get to plug into Sinai again. That's the Ramban. That's Nachmanides. Okay? Rashi, of course, goes according to the 11th century commentator, goes according to that it was an atonement for the Chet Egel. But also the same thing, you understand. It was the same charge because they needed that charge. And it didn't really come out. You understand that, Baruch Hashem, we suffered this unbelievable heartbreak. I can't believe we broke Hashem's heart. We did this golden calf. I can't believe it. Oh, Baruch Hashem, now we can go ahead and build this tabernacle, and it comes from us, and we have to put in. And they did it with such unbelievable energy and such unbelievable joy and with such unbelievable generosity. They gave all of themselves for this edifice, right? That in hopes that the divine presence will be there with us. And it didn't happen until way later, when we see where they actually went through the inauguration ceremony in 7 days. They built it. Moshe actually built it, offered sacrifices, and the fire didn't come down from heaven. Took it down. Next day, built it, offered sacrifices for 7 days. Built it, took it down, built it, took it down, 7 days, fine. Finally, the 8th day, where Aaron was like, I'm getting kind of tired of this. Well, he's not kind of tired. It's like, I'm looking real bad here because I don't think the fire is not coming down from heaven on account of me. That's what Aaron was thinking because of the golden calf. And he started to think it was really because of him. And then him and Moshe and Aaron went into the tent and they prayed. And then they came out and he blessed the people, and then a fire did come down finally. And it was, in other words, when the fire finally came down at the 8th day, all the people were like, yes, it works. The machine works. Okay? This divine connection machine. We got it. We got the Sinai back. Okay? So in any case, it was the idea here of basic intimacy. So the reason why that we have so many parshas, and you have to go through Vayakhel and Pekudei, finally, right? 5 parshas based on the tabernacle, because what was it? It is so deep, this thing, that we have to understand that there's just certain things that we just don't necessarily get. There's many, many, many secrets in the Torah. Unbelievable secrets in the Torah. And you have to go through this, and what are we supposed to do? What am I supposed to figure out? Why am I reading this about the curtains and the rods right? And the idea really is this, that first of all, we have absolutely no clue what goes on in the upper dimensions. That these things, this is a map. The tabernacle is a map. It's a map of our own spiritual psyche, our own soul. It's a map of the universe, and way beyond. It is the thread that connects all of the dimensions. And when we learn it, and we just go over it, and we just try to piece some things together to get, even as you build the image inside your mind, you are building yourself to be that holy tabernacle. You yourself make yourself to be the holy sanctuary for God's divine presence to dwell within you. Every time we just learn it, just piece it together. You just try to make the imagery inside your mind as you read for these parshas. You become the Mount Sinai, the walking Sinai. And with that, you generate light, and then you're going to go ahead and be able to give others light in that way. And sometimes we don't understand it. But we have to know that all of these temple vessels also correspond to parts of the body. The most simple one is the altar. The outer altar, which burns the offerings, relates to our stomach. Just like the outer altar burns and consumes the sacrifices to our stomach. Burns and consumes the food. The question is your food, do you look at your food as a sacrifice, right? Do you look at your food as something that you just eat for you? Or do you look at your food as just, no, I'm consuming this food in order to have energy, in order to do good deeds in the world, and bring out goodness in the world. See, the kavana, the intention, is very deep, is very different, makes it completely different, right? So that's just one thing, and of course there's the Ark of the Covenant. It's the heart, the most deepest place. Actually, the candelabra is the mind. Yeah. Why is the candelabra the mind? Now, Rabbi Nachman says, the Holy Master, well, the seven, we call it branches of the candelabra, really correspond to the seven, actually, the seven orifices of your head. 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nose, and 1 mouth. That accordingly, if you listen to the Chachamim, you listen to the wise men, you guard your eyes. Nose actually has to do with fear of heaven. Mouth has to do with speaking lies. If you keep those things holy, so you invite a greater light inside yourself. A lot of deep things go into the tabernacle, a lot of deep studies, and it's all in the commentaries that are, Baruch Hashem, thank God, are very accessible today. So the idea of learning this is to reestablish that intimate relationship with God. And we had to go through a breaking first. We had to go through this. It wasn't fitting, but until we get a breakage, then only then can we rebuild into being a face-to-face and intimate relationship with God. We should all merit, really, to establish, build, and grow that real intimate relationship with God. And never be afraid to make a place in your house, set a chair in a corner, to spend some time in personal prayer. I'm sure that Rod has told you about this before. Just personal talking to God. Have a cup of coffee with God, New video series, coffee with God, right? So God is probably saying, I can't even have a cup of coffee with this guy. He doesn't have time for me. It's probably, most of the creations, they don't have any time to talk to me anymore, right? Until they need something, right? We should all develop the intimate relationship with just like a husband and wife with God and have that intimacy. And through the learning of the tabernacle, we should establish that intimacy. Are there any questions?